Hi there, and welcome to World Breach Report number 29 from Sean Hunt's Monsters, and I'm your host, Sean, here talking to you about all things that are happening in our world around us today. Thanks so much for everyone who's liked and subscribed, and make sure you jump on down and check out our Discord server, which is growing in leaps and bounds. Pretty happy about that. And I've been really pleased with the job that everybody's been doing in there. The mods, specifically Stormy, I'd like to thank you out because... well, she keeps me on the straight and narrow. I was like, if something doesn't post on time, she's always right on top of it. So special shout outs to Stormy. Thanks so much for all you do, man. You're awesome. Yeah, the show. Things are moving along here. Things are happening. And the World Breach Report is my weekly sort of like catch up where I can report into you, let you know what I'm thinking, let you know the projects that are happening. As you are watching this right now on this particular Thursday, I'm going to be in the deep British Columbia bush. So I've been able to secure a bit of time and been able to get myself out to an area where there's a bunch of BFRO reports. And from one of the guys, Tall J, who's a good buddy of mine. And me and him disagree about what we think Bigfoot is. He's a monkey guy. He thinks it's a monkey. I don't think it's monkey, but you know, we're able to sit around and talk about these things because you know that's what you do when you're not crazy. So but there's a few stories this week that I wanted to talk about, and yeah, it seems like there's a bit of a psyop on the go, or maybe psyop is the wrong word. That word's getting thrown around a lot, but anyway, let's get into it, and hopefully I'll be able to have some more footage for you guys pretty quick. And see how it all made out using the bike. See how we did on our first major extreme Pacific Northwest camping trip. So we'll see how it goes. We're going right into the heart of darkness where there's been a number of Bigfoot sightings, a number of orb sightings in this particular location. It's kind of hard to get to. You have to go down the Mystery Valley. And it was recently just cut off by a landslide that took it out. And so you have to kind of go around. And the area where we're going, if you were to take a piece of string and mark out 50 miles and draw a circle, just about every British Columbia report you've heard of Bigfoot all comes within this one area. So it should be a pretty wild time. Should be a pretty wild time, especially if you're out there. And whether or not you think it's a monkey or an interdimensional creature or a thin space or whatever it is, that's where I'm going. And I don't mind saying, this has been a bit of a workup to get to this point where I'm actually, you know, hey, what if I got a bike loaded up with kit and then drove out there? Well, I'm doing it. I'm actually doing it. So maybe I'll be cold. I doubt it, but we'll see how it goes. Be able to report back to you and hopefully give you some tips and pointers. But man, I'll tell you, getting everything ready to go on these trips just never mind when you pack for vacation. I don't know about you, but I'm one of these guys who like packs and unpacks and packs. Like, well, when you're going out into the bush, on a bike, good God, you've got to kind of go over your gear and over your gear and over your gear and wait. You'd think that because you're mounted, you wouldn't have to worry so much about weight. Well, unfortunately, you do. You do, in fact, need to worry about weight, which kind of sucks, but there it is. So something to think about. But anyway, we'll report in on that in a little bit. Now, I've got an interesting story here. So let's just get through this. This was put out, and this is in the Daily Mail, okay, which is fairly, I don't know, is that mainstream? Daily Mail seems kind of mainstream, but anyway. Noah's Ark could finally be found after a historic deal promises irrefutable proof. Yeah, so this is a Nothing Burger story talking about a biblical Noah's Ark, which is, 2x2. Like this story is crazy on so many fronts. A mysterious formation high in the mountains of eastern Turkey and Mount Ararat has long fueled speculation that it could be the final resting place of Noah's Ark. Okay, so if you've been in the game longer than 20 seconds, you've heard about this. There's this mountain in Mount Ararat in Turkey where they say that's where the Ark came to rest. The Noah's Ark, the actual story, that's where they say this has come from. Now, researchers believe that identified signs of a massive man-made structure buried beneath the site have received official approval to put their theory to the test. So they've got paperwork. The team behind Noah Ark Scans announced that its Turkish partner has secured government permits to conduct what describes as the most comprehensive scientific investigation ever undertaken at the Durin Pinar Formation near Mount Ararat. Researchers have previously used ground-penetrating radar to scan more than 20 feet below the site, identifying what they describe as angular structures and hidden voids they believe are inconsistent with natural geological formations. Now, this is really weird to me. The Daily Mail is running a story about Noah's Ark, citing biblical passages and biblical prophecies. And you couple with this the idea that the UFO thing now, everybody's coming forward to the government saying, yeah, UFOs are real, they're a real thing, and aliens are real, and you know, we call them UAPs, and they're not aliens, they're non-human intelligence, and gradually it seems like the entire UFO field is being co-opted. It's kind of like the internet. Like when the internet came out, there was the internet, it was free, it was awesome, you know, everyone was anonymous, you could do whatever you want, say whatever you want. And then after it kind of cast this wide net and everybody got involved, then they started to dial it down and ratchet it down and ratchet it down and Web 2.0 and everything got really, really controlled until it turned into something that was so far from what was promised it wasn't even funny. And I think that's kind of what's happening with UFOs. See, for years, people who believed in UFOs were completely marginalized and sidelined. And now it's like, see, you know, they're coming out and they're saying aliens are a real thing. Behold, aliens are real. You were all right. And so the people who've been on the fringes for a hell of a long time are like, ha, we are vindicated. You know, there is UFOs, but actually not, because they haven't really come out and said it. They're just they're admitting that they lied. And there's this weird kind of, I don't know, like co-opting going on. There's something doesn't feel right about it. And they're trying to bring in, there's all this talk about demons and angels. And this is like going backwards. It's not going forwards. This is like trying to frame everything in this like mad dualistic kind of framing. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe in good and evil. I think that good and evil are a real thing. But I think that, you know, there is good and there is evil, but not everything is good or evil. You know what I mean? A vast majority of stuff is just kind of style. And you have to really, really reach for it to get into the evil stuff and into the good stuff. I mean, it exists, it's there, but, you know, it's not everything. And, I don't know. As I was watching all this stuff and seeing what's going on, noticing all this, like, this tie-in, they're trying to co-opt religion. There's these billionaires who are talking about the Antichrist, and everybody's kind of trying to bring forward this religion so they can reinvent the wheel. And there's something that really felt bad about it, you know? But then, in the secondary story, so you can check out this story here, and the whole thing just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. But I found an interview, just came out on Danny Jones with Dr. Heather Lynn. Now, Dr. Heather Lynn she's rock and roll as it comes. And I really, really advise that you check out this interview, because she explains in a different kind of way how it seems as though there's a war on against conviction, against the individual will. So it doesn't really matter what you believe if the fact that you believe something is something that they don't want. So if you had conviction about anything, I don't like the color blue, it's only a matter of time before you're considered an extremist. You're a blue elitist, or whatever they want to call it. You're a colorist, or whatever. So it's not really about what you believe. It's the fact that you have any beliefs whatsoever that you claim as your own, that you're thinking for yourself. When what they want is they want people to just go along with, you know, what the feed is saying. And the interesting thing is that the minute you unplug from Facebook, the minute you unplug from the internet, you realize that so much of you don't realize how much of your worldview is framed by social media. Like everything you think. And it's controlling your thoughts. It's controlling your perception. It's controlling the way these things impact you. It's really, really dangerous. And I think it's far more nefarious than we even recognize. I mean, I really suggest that, you know, you should probably stop social media. Like if you're on Facebook, get off Facebook. Well, I only use it for Messenger. Yeah, get off. Get off Facebook. Just get off. Well, if you can't turn it off, then it's an addiction, right? Because if you can't turn it off, then it controls you. That's just the truth, right? So maybe you should turn that off. There's lots of other ways to communicate with people. And maybe if you can only communicate on Facebook, they're not really such great friends. Maybe there's more to this. But more than anything, this Heather Lynn, you want to check out this Danny Jones podcast. It's a little long, but she's really lived a life, man. And some of the stuff she's been involved with and seeing how these elite groups operate, very, very good interview. Very, very down to earth. Super into this interview. You want to check it out. Because it explains more than anything, better than I would, how there's a war on against conviction. A war on against the will, against your will. Against you having your own thoughts and beliefs and opinions. Because anybody who stands up and says, well, I don't agree with that, suddenly you're shunned. You're an outsider. You don't fit in. Well, the people who watch this show, I mean, chances are you haven't fit in a while. You know, chances are you're kind of used to it, right? So what does it mean? What does it mean now that all this is starting to become the mainstream? And I'm starting to feel like we're all getting caught in this very wide cast net. And just like the early days of the internet, they're putting it out all over the paranormal crowd, and very soon they'll start to ratchet it down and ratchet it down and ratchet it down. And mark my words, this is coming. This is coming, to be sure. And you run into stories like this where parents in Brazil were sentenced to 50 days in prison for homeschooling their children. Yeah, that seems kind of psycho. According to a report from Christian Post, a couple in Brazil has become the first parents in the country to face criminal conviction for homeschooling their children. Adeto and Lida Donardi were sentenced to 50 days in prison by the lower court in São Paulo in April after a judge determined their home education problem neglected the required state-approved content. State-approved content. The ruling centered on the couple's two daughters, 15 and 11, whose curriculum was found lacking instruction on gender and sex education, as well as tolerance and diversity. So, there's that. The court also appointed the girls' musical preferences as evidence of a broader cultural shortcomings. Neither daughter favored popular genres like trap, a subgenre of American hip-hop, or sertanejo, a traditional Brazilian folk style, which the judge interpreted as a failure to provide adequate cultural exposure. This decision stands in stark contrast to the girls' documented achievements. Both are accomplished pianists, fluent in multiple languages. Independent assessments have highlighted their strong academic and social development. The conviction for intellectual neglect came despite the prosecutor's recommendation for acquittal following witness testimonies and review from the family situation. An independent educational psychologist similarly found no evidence of neglect. So what is this story about? It's about what I just said. It's about controlling the mind. It's about making sure you go along with the crowd. You know, that whole thing about sticks and stones. Well, if everybody else jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? Well, clearly, that's what they want. Like, why would anyone homeschool their children? Maybe you don't agree with some of the stuff they're teaching in school. You know, maybe you think, I don't really agree with that. You know, like, I don't like the color blue. There's all these blue books. You know, I'm one of these people who likes to keep my kids blue free. No more blue. That's it. And maybe that might be an extremist viewpoint. But I think, you know, as they get older, they can decide whether or not they want to be around blue. That blue color. Blue light's bad for you. You know. And, you know, you can't not like a color. Are you a hater? Do you hate blue? Is your heart filled with hate? Is that a hate crime to not like blue? Is it a hate crime to hate anything? Are you allowed to hate anything? Well, I guess you're allowed to hate Nazis, right? That's the default. You're supposed to punch them and attack them on type. National Socialists. National Socialists. And I think you're supposed to hate Trump too, right? You're supposed to hate whoever they tell you to hate. Like the 5-minute hate or the 2-minute hate or whatever it is. But if you were to hate, say, blue, yeah, that would be interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. But I think you see my point. There's a war on for our minds and for the minds of our children and for making you being able to think on your own. And that's kind of the problem. Because once you start doing primary research and doing your own research and thinking for yourself, well, Maybe you might turn off the old television there. Maybe you might go against what they're saying, which, you know, nobody wants that. Now, there was we got a cryptid sighting that has come back up. We're talking about Champy. This is the monster of Lake Champlain. A pair of intriguing videos filmed at Lake Champlain show it might be the site's legendary monster, Champ, swimming through the water. A remarkable sighting reportedly occurred on the evening of June 11th in the community of Port Henry, New York. Witness Thomas Skozafava, Thomas S., spotted the anomaly while looking out the lake from the hill of the community, realizing he was seeing something unusual. The retired town supervisor for the community of Moriah smartly captured 2 videos, which you can see, of the wondrous moment with his cell phone. Longtime Champ researcher Katie Elizabeth, who alerted Coast to Coast to the recent sighting, indicated that Skofava's higher vantage point was particularly fortuitous when allowed for a better view of the lake. So what is that? What is this? Strange things in the water. Of course, there's a lot of talking right now about, USOs, things under the water. This is all coming forwards, which, again, it used to be exciting. Now it's making me kind of slow the roll a little bit. Now I'm starting to, everybody else is rushing forwards, and I'm starting to be like, hey guys, I'm not sure this is the right way. Hey guys, I'm not sure we want to trust the government here. Hey guys, have these guys lied to us before? Have these guys served us up something that has wound up tasting bad? Have these guys left a bad aftertaste before? Because it seems to me that everything they're doing here, the government lies to us. And even when all the best lies are like half-truths. So, I don't know, man. All these guys that are coming forward that are keeping their top secret clearance for years and years and years, people were killed for talking about this stuff. Now all of a sudden they're not. Now all of a sudden they're like, well, I was in the intelligence community, but now I'm out, but I still have my top secret clearance. Yeah. If you know the truth and you're not telling us the truth, then you're working for the government, right? Well, I don't want to go to jail. Okay. So you're not really disclosing anything, are you? Right? What is all this about? What's really going on here? And why is it that people were willing to kill other people in order to keep this secret? Is it true that perhaps the reality of our world is so horrific, so totally mind-numbingly terrible that we're all going to, flee that into a new dark age, like Lovecraft said? That's what they try to make you say. But, here on Sean Hunt's Monsters, it's not what we're about. I think we have to stare at the face and be like, yeah, well, if we're being farmed, I guess we better set a trap. Guess we better get all Predator with this stuff. And, of course, you probably saw this, the begging robot thing. A bizarre spectacle saw a robot kneeling on the floor for begging random members of the public for money. A recent stunt on the streets of China saw a humanoid Unitree G1 made by Hangzhou-based Unitree Robotics kneeling on the pavement begging for cash. Yeah. So, that's kind of one of those stories that I would kind of have to follow. It's like almost as though they're trying to make this dystopian future into a thing. They're trying to make it into... And this story will be here, and it'll be gone again. So this robot wasn't really begging, was it? Really? They just had this psyop that they were doing where the robot's begging, and now it's a news story. It's not even a news story. This is just advertising, right? But then you got other stories too. Like, did you know that the Goodyear Blimp, this is an interesting thing about the Goodyear Blimp, is that the entire crew of the Goodyear Blimp vanished without a trace? Now, so in August 16, 1942, the Navy Blimp L-8 lifted off from Treasure Island, San Francisco, on a routine anti-submarine patrol. And 3 hours later, the Blimp reappeared over the ocean beach, drifting east with no one at the controls. 2 surf fishermen grabbed the mooring ropes, looked inside the gondola. It was empty. So you had two guys. Yeah. Lieutenant Ernst DeWitt Cody, 27, and Ensign Charles Adams, 35. And the crew radio that they spotted an oil slick off the Farallon Islands. A Liberty ship and a fishing boat watched the L-8 descend 30 feet above the ocean and circle the slick. That was the last anyone saw of the crew. So I guess it must have been more than 2 guys. 3 hours later, the blimp reappeared over Ocean Beach, drifting east with no one at the controls. 2 surf fishermen grabbed the mooring ropes, looked inside the gondola, empty. They couldn't hold it. The L8 scraped a cliff, dropped the depth charge, drifted over the Olympic Club golf course and Mission Street. Finally crashed in front of a house at 419 Bellevue Avenue, Daly City, where a crowd had been following on foot. The radio and engines were still on. All 3 parachutes were aboard, so was the rubber life raft. No distress signal had been sent. It had not been shot down. Interesting. So what happened to this? What happened to the people? Nobody knows. The men were legally declared dead. And the blimp was repaired, and after the world sold back to Goodyear, where it flew as an advertising blimp named America until 1982. So that's a thing. What's that about? Why? Well, we don't know. Well, we should probably pause there, shouldn't we? Shouldn't we, like, think about what the hell's going on here? There's so many stories like this, and yet we don't seem to really care too much about that. And, of course, you know, they're talking about a bad idea here. Let's talk about some bad ideas. So, as you may be aware, there's a lot of these weight loss drugs out there that make you look like, well, Skeletor. You look kind of super gaunt. Well, now they're trying to find, you know, tell me this doesn't seem just a little bit too on the nose. Like, doesn't seem like, yeah. So there's a study that's come out, again, bad idea, where weight loss drugs blunt violent behavior. Yeah, great. Rutgers study of 821 adults found that impulsivity and heavy drinking, 2 top predictors of violence, were far more weakly tied to violent acts among people currently taking GLP-1s like Ozempic, among other form of users. The link between impulsivity and violence was about 62% weaker among current users. The alcohol link was about 52% weaker, although the alcohol result was less stable. The drugs did not appear to lower impulsivity or drinking directly, suggesting they may act on the path from those traits to violence rather than the traits themselves. So this is, you know, your typical kind of thinly veiled way to get you talking about these drugs, which you shoot your body up with, which puts your, you know, causes you to slowly die and starve and your pancreas to stop working. And yeah, I don't know, man. Like, you know, Ozempic is illegal in Europe, right? Like the place that makes it, Nordisk, right? They can't sell it in their home country, right? And I don't really even understand how it's possible that people can take this stuff. I mean, I personally try to understand how vaping became a thing. Suddenly there was no vaping, and all of a sudden vaping was everywhere. How did that happen? Very strange. Very strange. So as you look at these news stories that seem to circle around, they get seemingly more and more, I don't know, commercial. It seems more and more like we're being really manipulated. Like, I've covered news for a long time. And the stories that come out, everything's got its own kind of angle. It's not really an interesting news story. Everything's just funded. Everything's been bankrolled. And, yeah, that's why that interview on Danny Jones, you want to check that out. Because I think that in order for us to be, well, independent, for us to think for ourselves, we have to start, you know, unplugging and stepping back from social media. We really do. And I'm not to sound like a broken record, but it's a problem. And we need to find a way to get past that so that, you know, well, I mean, even if everyone listening to this did get past it, there's so many people that are using this to control their lives. Like, I'm an old guy now, but all these young people, man, they don't even know of a time when there wasn't, you know, the internet and cell phones and TikTok and everything. And their whole reality worldview has been shaped from a very, very early age to now by social media. They're basically mind controlled. I mean, they're not going to go against the crowd because you'll be shunned, and being shunned is the worst thing imaginable, right? So what do you do? What do you do? You have to embrace your individuality. You have to decide that what you think is important and what you want to do is important, even though you can't really justify it. This is how I feel about it. You have to have some conviction, even if they call you an extremist. Even if you don't tell anyone about your conviction. You should probably work on that. Think about what you believe in. What do I stand for? What will I not stand for? What are the things what do I hate? You must hate a few things. Can't be general things. I mean, what if you hate the color blue? Will they make you an extremist then if you hate blue? Blue hater. Don't want to be that guy. Don't be that guy. But one thing is for certain is that we're going to have to take more accountability for what we're doing, because it seems like we're being led down the garden path. And, when the terrifying vistas of reality make you want to go mad or flee into the safety of a new dark age, here on Sean Hunts Monsters, hunting monsters is the third option.